features of MicroVerse 1.5, which should be available next week on the Asset Store and is available on GitHub right now. So I haven't done one of these videos in a little while. I think the last one I did was around 1.1's release, and I've been working pretty hard on adding a bunch of new features and capabilities and basically making this the best terrain editor out there. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and create a terrain, and there's a little handy shortcut here for create MicroVerse with terrain, and that will just create a single terrain, which you could extend all you want, and MicroVerse game object for you. And I'm going to go ahead and turn draw stamp previews off. That's a single click to turn off all the preview highlighting, because I personally prefer to use the hierarchy, and I don't like anything changing what I'm seeing in terms of the view. So quickly, I'm just going to create a little environment. Maybe I drag this guy out and a little of this, and then let's go. If you're not familiar with the content browser, this is the browser, and essentially it's a very fast way to get at all the content that's sort of set up for MicroVerse. And you can also see other content packs that are set up for MicroVerse and get a link directly to the asset store or wherever they're hosted. So I'm just going to pick out some stamps. This is a free collection that Roland does from his Stamp It series. And there's an examples here that's a bunch of really nice stamps. It's totally free, so there's literally no reason not to go pick it up. And then what I'm going to do is size this to about the size of the terrain. And let's just set it up in the center. And here we have like pretty nice little blend of mountainous areas that should work pretty well for what we're doing. So the content browser features different types of content, and it's all organized by various packages. So the MicroVerse examples has some texturing options in here. And again, I can just drag this out and I can change this to global. And then boom, our whole terrain is textured with this setting. And you can go in and tweak all the settings in any of these. They're just collections of stamps done as prefabs, or try different ones or whatever. And we have the same thing for vegetation here. And I have a couple of the nature manufacturers asset packs installed. And so I can just grab vegetation from them and place it. And so that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and make this forest here. And I'm going to make this thing a little bit bigger, just to kind of get it going. And one of the things I don't like is that it's spawning up on this hill here, on the kind of the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and add a slope filter to these. And if we just turn on the slope filter and kind of tweak it, we can get it so it's a little, yeah, there we go. So it kind of stays away from the hilly areas. And I also want to do that with the texturing on here, this grass texturing, and the ground texturing is the one I want. So there's no slope filter on that, and we're going to go ahead and kind of get that close to where the other one is, so that essentially this forest floor shows up where the forest is. So I keep those matched. And I like the way that looks. And again, I could spend more time on this. But I'm going to show you some new features. The first one I'm going to talk about is the trees now render a signed distance field for their locations. And they sort of do it individually, but then also have a collective one that gets merged together. If you don't know what signed distance fields are, don't worry. It's a quick way for me to know how far something is from a tree. And so we can do a lot of stuff with that. And I'm going to drag in these poppy fields because they're nice and bright and easy to see. And so you can see that the way these are set up now, if I go to the stamp, is that we have this poppy plant prefab, and you can see it's using a bunch of different noises to kind of create a nice random pattern, which if you mix that in with the grass, it's going to look great because things tend to cluster, right? But I'm going to do something different just so we can show this off. One thing you'll also notice is you can now have up to 3 different noises that get blended together for your overall layer weight. And you'll see that this is blended with an overlay, and so is this one. So you can use a bunch of different noises and get really complex patterns this way. But I'm going to turn all this off because one of the things I really love in procedural generation is, noise is very powerful, and I've spent a lot of time investigating different noise algorithms and playing with ways to combine noise and to get, certain effects. But context is an actual more powerful thing. So context is the idea that things are based off of other things in the scene. And this is what the sign distance field stuff can do for us. And I'm going to go ahead and just increase the density a little bit of these things just to be kind of, like a solid thing so we can really see it here. And you'll see that we've got these various trees. And the first thing I'm going to do, we do have some cutting out because of slope. But the first thing I'm going to do here is show you a new feature for the actual trees, which uses the sign distance fields. And let's go in here and select the tree stamp in there. And there's these settings down here. Where are they? Here we go. Height mod amount, and then height mod width. So I'm going to change the width to be a bit higher, like 6 or 7. And then I'm going to move this up. And what you'll see is that this creates little mounds where all the trees are. Okay? And in some cases, those mounds have actually, because of the slope filter on this, on these, the poppies, it's currently clearing them out around the mound because it's changing the actual geometry of the terrain here. So that's cool. Now, why would I want a little mound under every tree? Because trees around this size, they start, but bigger trees tend to do this. Their root structure pushes up the ground around them. They collect leaves and dirt in their near their root structure, and this forms essentially a mound of both soil and debris. And so this is a really nice way to provide contextual height information around your trees. And you can do the same thing with texture. For instance, here there's a layer that you can give it a texture layer, and you can give it a width and a weight, just like you can with the other one, and basically have texture change around the trees. So if you wanted to blend in maybe a little bit more of a dirty texture or like a darker forest floor, you could do that, and you would get that with context instead of just a blanket thing. So this sign distance field stuff can give us this context around both the texturing and the height. And we're getting placement here for free just because of our slope filter, but let's go ahead and turn that off. And we're going to turn that slope filter off altogether, and you'll see that the poppies are now solid. And now what we can do is on these poppies, we can use the min and max distance from tree. So if I set the max distance from tree to say 6, or let's go a little higher, let's say 8, then these will only spawn around trees. And so you'll see that right where that mound is where they're kind of all appearing. And where we don't have trees, we don't have poppies. That's pretty cool because it gives us a lot more context to what we're doing. You can also set the min distance from the tree. So if I have the max distance at 0, that's endless, but then I can do like min distance of 8, and you'll see that it doesn't spawn close to the tree. And so this is a very powerful way to work because you can create cascades. And if I have another tree stamp, so I have a tree stamp here, if I put a tree stamp right after this one, then that minimum and maximum distance will be in reference to the trees that have come before it. So essentially you can cascade, say, a bush below it. And I think that's what's going on with some of these stamps. I haven't looked, but let's see if they're using it. Min distance from tree. They are. So it's only going to place this big bush here, which I can find one of them here, within 2 meters. It's like this bush here. There's a big and a small one. They're only going to appear like right close to the trees. And so that's a way to kind of layer context. Now, eventually I want to have a way for you to specify which tree stamp you actually want to reference, so that you can, maybe you have apple trees and you want to spawn apples around them, or, things like that. But I haven't quite got there yet, but it'll come along pretty soon. And yeah, so this is a very cool way to build sort of context between how things spawn, build a hierarchy of relationships, which is very powerful to make your game world believable. So for this next thing, I'm just going to increase the density of this forest. Okay, so now we have this like super dense forest, and I don't. Maybe I'll show. Well, I'll show it now. Why not? Let's. This has been shown before, but let's just create a spline here. Oh, yeah, I'm using the new 2.1 version of splines I'm testing, and it's mostly broken, so I'm not going to do that now. But if you've watched previous videos, you know that you can clear out this forest along a spline path, and that's really cool. And you can do that with areas and stuff, but it's not necessarily what you want, because in all cases, because that uses an occlusion stamp, which basically prevents anything from growing on there or being spawned on there. But there's a new type of stamp that is very powerful and has a lot of use cases, including kind of an improvement to what you could use the occlusion stamp for. So if we go to the MicroVerse and we do a create clear stamp, you'll see everything disappears, because right on the top we have a clear stamp that's global and setting itself to destroy everything in its wake. But if I set that to range and find it, here it is, and bring that over here, you can see it makes a nice little hole in our forest. And so we can use this, and again, this could be constrained by a spline area or any of the types of fall-off tools that we have. And you can scale it, rotate it, whatever you want to do. You can create a nice little clearing. Well, we can do more than that, because we have the filters available, so we could make this only happen on certain slopes or on heights or whatever we want. But we can also use that layer noise that we have here. And so let's change this to an FBM noise. And if I increase the amplitude here, you can see we can do like a partial clearing now, where this this clearing is there, but we've kind of like let it overgrow a little bit. And you can move this around, right, and move it to over there. And you notice, because the trees take a little longer to update, you can see where all the tree spots are coming on, where they're all going to be until I let go from that little height mod that we're doing. So it's kind of wrinkling the terrain. So yeah, this can be very powerful. You can also put that noise into stamp space now. And this means that instead of being a world space noise where we're moving through like a noise field and whatever's under there is kind of showing up, and this is actually moving the noise with us. So you'll see the kind of the areas where it happens move with us. And the nice thing about this is if you decide you want to use a texture-based noise and you want to actually use a texture, this means and you've drawn a careful texture, that texture will be exactly the size of the stamp wherever you put it, right? So that's really powerful if you're using textures for fall off, or textures for cases where you want some very detailed texturing or something like that. So yeah, the clear stamp is very cool, and the other cool thing about this is, and let's go ahead and just clear it out even more, or just get rid of this, just for example. So you could do this before by placing an inclusion stamp way up in the hierarchy and having basically prevent anything from being spawned here, right? But the clear stamp doesn't prevent anything from being spawned after it. So if we say take, well, not the same forest, let's just take, let's take the pine forest here and stick it in here. It'll grow just fine, right? It's going to grow and just grow over everything in the clear stamp, because it's after the clear stamp in the hierarchy. So, so you can kind of keep going deeper here with stamps. You could, have a prefab set up here of stamps that you throw down, and it has a clear stamp in it, which this forest does, and then you can just keep layering. So you're like, okay, I've got my forest, let's make a swamp inside the forest. Okay, now let's put a clearing inside the swamp where I'm going to put a little shack, and you can just kind of layer things like Photoshop layers, but now with actual, trees and details. So I think that's really cool. I think it brings a very natural workflow that was missing. And again, combined with like a bunch of the other new features, is very, very cool. And you'll notice also that we have other packs in here that are being, stamps are being created for. Like this is the Tropical Forest pack from Baldino Boy, the Castle Valley Collection 1, which has a bunch of great like desert and rock kind of assets, mountain trees from Nature Manufacturer. And all of these things you can just, you can drag out and get whatever you want going very easily. So here we go. We have some snowy trees, and we'd probably want to put some snow onto the texturing. But yeah. So this system is getting really, really fast and powerful at the same time. And Roland's been making these awesome stamp collections which use these new features, and so they're going to keep getting better. They now have descriptions too. Sometimes one of the things we've been debating is how complex these things can get and how much context they can require. Like, does the forest snow require spawning on a snow texture? And so we have a little info area in the content browser now, so that if there is those types of rules, they'll be noted there. So yeah, there's been a lot of other improvements, a lot of very small, quality of life improvements and feature improvements and stuff like the multiple noises. But the main things has really been the sign distance field stuff, the clear stuff, and then like a lot of usability things. Like, for instance, you can now disable and enable individual trees from your tree stamp. You can drag and drop stuff into this area to add new things to this stamp. It's all inlined. It used to be you had to open this editor to get to it. So I've been doing a lot of work on making this thing really just super fast and fun to work with. And yeah, I think it's been pretty successful. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Check out the patch notes if you want to know more. There's literally tons of things that have been added, and yeah, I've got a bunch more on my kind of internal roadmap that I want to explore to make this really just the fastest way to get exactly what you want, and then have it be fully non-destructive, fully real-time, all the time, so that you can edit anything you want right up to the day you ship without having to bake anything or make trade-offs that you have to then live with. So yeah, I think that's it for this video, and stay tuned. I really do want to get to some deep dives on individual features and kind of actually, make the marketing actually reflect the product, which is the thing I don't enjoy doing compared to making the product better. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you soon.